Which chi-square test makes the most sense to use here? Test for independence, or sometimes it's called the test for association. We want to see if there's a relationship. How many samples were taken? 1641, so that's just one sample, right? It's one sample of the 8-hour shifts. They gathered data from 1641 shifts. How many variables? 2 variables. They were looking at deaths, yes or no, and then they were looking at which of those randomly selected, or we're assuming randomly selected 1641, Gilbert worked for. What was the chi-square test statistic? 86.472. Which means our p-value, or sorry, degrees of freedom. 1. Rows minus 1, columns minus 1, multiplied. Since we had 2 rows and 2 columns, 2 minus 1 times 2 minus 1, 1 degree of freedom. Have to know that in order to calculate my p-value. What do you guys think about the p-value?
She did it.
It's certainly looking highly unlikely that this was just by chance. Do you think that a expert witness could actually stand up on the stand and say she did it? An expert witness? No. Expert witness can say, it is my belief that, or it is highly unlikely that there's not a relationship here. Oh, I forgot a 0 there. I got 1.419 times 10 to the negative 20th. Sorry, I'll zoom that out. I used an alpha level of 0.01. Technically speaking, does it matter what significance level you chose? You're going to reach the same conclusion on this one. I chose an alpha level of 0.01 because I'm potentially accusing her of an absolutely horrible crime here, right? Her life is on the line. If she is found guilty, she's probably spending the rest of her life in jail. I want to be really, really, really sure as an expert witness before I stand up and say it is highly unlikely that what we see just happened by chance. Which was the largest component? Since we rejected the null, we said there is evidence of an association. Which piece was the largest component of chi-square? Yeah, it came from this first cell right here, yes and yes, deaths and her presence. So I looked up a little bit more information about this case because I found this fascinating. It turns out, like, she was found guilty, by the way. Looking up articles about this, she had just started dating an officer, like a security officer at the hospital, and he would get called in during emergency cardiac situations to perform CPR, and she would be there working as well, and the staff noticed that as these cardiac situations were happening, she's making eyes at him, he's making eyes at her. This was like, she was flirting during this time. There was one incident even where they said during the attempted resuscitation of a patient that it was witnessed that the two of them were playing footsie underneath the patient's bed. Like, there was additional suspicious behavior going on, but that's not enough to necessarily convict somebody of murder. But you put that together with the statistical analysis and all the other evidence, and she was found guilty. So I hope you guys found this somewhat interesting. This is an actual application. They did do this statistical analysis, and it was presented as evidence. how do we get our expected counts again? Because you guys will be expected to show your expected counts, yes.
Row total times column total divided by total.
Yes. Row total times column total divided by table total. So I've calculated the totals up here. Row times column divided by table total. So to get the expected count here for yes and yes, 257 times 74 divided by 6841. And I got 11.59. And you do that for each row and column. You do have to show that. If you show it when you're checking your conditions, that's fine, showing that all your expected counts are greater than 5. If you show it somewhere else on the page, you would just say, all expected counts greater than 5, see table. You do have to label it expected counts, because if you just have a random table on there somewhere without it being labeled, they're like, okay, what is this? What are you doing with this? So. Do you guys have any questions about this particular activity? I do want to show you a resource that you have access to that will help you decide which test to use, or help you practice deciding which test to use. As we get ready for the AP exam, you can use it for any of the different types of tests. But for right now, as you're getting ready for the test on Wednesday, I would focus just on the 3 chi-square tests. Let me show you where I've put that resource. Are you guys okay if I take this off the screen for right now? Okay. So on our Canvas page, so modules, and you go to today's date, the 20th. If you click on today's module, task 3 here, which says which test to use. If you click on that, that takes you to an online resource. I hate the background color, I'm sorry. It's really horrible. You can check the categories that you want to work on and hit the submit button. So if you just want to work practicing for the test on Wednesday, you can hit these 3 right here. These are our 3 chi-square tests: goodness of fit, independence, homogeneity. You click submit and it will present a scenario to you, and you decide which of the tests to use. Distribution of ages at a university. Is the distribution of ages at a university normally distributed? Counts were taken of students within 1, 2, and 3 standard deviations of the mean. I would think this is a goodness of fit. We want to know, does it match this distribution here? So goodness of fit, yep. I got a smiley face on that horrible yellow-green background. And then you can move to the next question. You can use that to practice over and over and over. When we start studying for the AP exam, you could come in here and check as many of these as you wanted to. Specifically, if you're having trouble with, how do I know whether it's this one or this one, just go back and forth between those 2. As we get closer to the exam, maybe look at just a mix of all of them, like which test would I want to use, and then use that to practice with, right? You guys feel okay about this particular resource? Cool. You have the rest of the class period to work on your review. We are going to do a free response question tomorrow from a previous AP exam. If you are not going to be here tomorrow because you're taking the AP Lang exam, that's the piece that you're going to be missing. I will do my best to record kind of our debrief at the end. And if you want a copy of which question we did, you're more than welcome to stop by my room at any point in time. If you have specific questions, I can take those today, tomorrow during class, or again, AP Lang people. If you want to send me emails with those particular questions, I'm more than happy to go over anything and answer questions. I do have office hours tomorrow after school, so that would be an additional resource if you're not going to be in class. I'm here until 3:30 tomorrow after school.